I want to introduce Shahram Missaghi, Dr. Shahram Missaghi, who used to be on the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council Advisory Board. Shahram is the Water Resource Regulatory Coordinator for the City of Minneapolis, and he is joined by Carolyn Eckstein, who is on our advisory board now with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. She's in charge of the water quality sampling program. So they're going to begin with some history of the Camden Pond and work they've done to monitor it so we understand hydrology, and then we'll talk about the research studies that have to do with this pond.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. So I want to start by saying thank you so much, John, and the university for this opportunity, and welcome to our beautiful Camden Pond. Today is fantastic looking, so everything is working well. Again, my name is Shahram Missaghi, and I work for the City of Minneapolis Public Works as one of the Water Research Coordinator. And I just wanted to share a little bit about the pond before we hand it out to Carolyn to talk about more specific monitoring efforts. So in the City of Minneapolis, we have about 30 stormwater ponds. And the stormwater ponds, of course, offer a great deal of benefits. They act like for water quantity or flooding. They provide water quality and rate control. And plus that, as you can see, for example, this pond, they offer a huge amenity for the community. So our communities enjoy these ponds very much. So we have a great driver to make sure we manage and maintain the quality of these stormwater ponds. Now, back in 2019 and 2020, the city started doing a pond assessment, where it was to look at all the ponds and to come up with a 10-year maintenance program. That led us into maintaining and monitoring the ponds for the past 5 years. And this was one of the ponds that we were lucky to maintain and monitor it. And we also work with our Minneapolis Park Recreation Board, who are a co-permittee on our MPDSs, and they lead the monitoring of our stormwater management. So this is a wonderful partnership. Now, with this pond is a 4-acre surface area at about 6.5 feet deep, but and we've been fortunate also to partner with a number of other researchers who also will share with you. So we've gathered a lot of good information about this pond. And we're lucky again to have our own in-house researchers and scientists here. So I'm going to let Carolyn talk about more specific of it. And if you have any questions, just let us know.
Thank you, Shahram. So first I'll just give you a little bit of background on the pond. Shahram already explained the size and the depth, but Camden Pond was built back in 2007 for flood control purposes, and later this nice park space was added as an amenity for the neighborhood. The drainage area for the park is a lot bigger, I think, than the other ponds that we've seen today. It's about 235 acres, with 75 of those being impervious surfaces, and it's mostly single-family home, residential, and right-of-way land use types, as well as some parkland on that side of the pond. And like Shahram said, there was a pond study, a screening study done by the city, the park board, and Stantec in 2020 and 2021. And the findings from that study ultimately led to our selection of Camden Pond for monitoring using stormwater auto monitoring equipment. So that's what I'll be talking about now. So the goals of monitoring at Camden Pond between the city and the park board were first to measure and compare imported versus exported pollutant loads. Second, to measure the true storage capacity of the pond because it is built for flood control, and then compare that to the design capacity. And third, we wanted to assess how a pond built for flood control could potentially also have some kind of water quality benefit and quantify what that benefit might be. And then, of course, we want to comply with the monitoring provisions of the MPDS permit. So Camden Pond has 3 inlets and 1 outlet. So over there, you might be able to see 2 large outfalls. There's 2 really huge pipes that come down North 42nd Avenue from the, north? And those pipes are meant for the flood control purposes. They have a very flat slope, and so oftentimes the pond will actually backflow into the pipe, which, if anyone's done stormwater monitoring, you know that that is not a positive. The north pipe on the far side of the street, that drains an area of only 10.5 acres, whereas the southern pipe drains an area of like 130 acres. So pretty different, similar land use types, but very different sizes. And actually, something I want to note, in the second year of our study, we learned that Crystal Lake, which is about a mile and a half that way in the city of Robbinsdale, actually outflows into the pipe that comes down the south side of the street into Camden Pond, and that did put a bit of a wrinkle in things as well.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit of a wrinkle. And so lastly, behind me, you can kind of see where those rocks are is the third inlet, and that drains the Crystal Cemetery, which is just over the fence there, and that's very low impervious area, mostly parkland type. Okay, so we did the study for 3 years. I don't know if I said that yet, between 2022 and 2024. And based on the results from the first 2 years, we determined using our flow data that the North Street Inlet and the Cemetery Inlet only contributed a combined 5% of annual total volume into the pond. So we actually ended up dropping those from the study for the final year, which allowed us to focus more on the main inlet, which contributes 95% of the volume and required a lot of maintenance and troubleshooting due to the backflow and due to the Crystal Lake input coming from the other direction. It was a pretty challenging site to figure out. And in addition to those sites, the outlet of the pond is way down there. Can't really see it. We also installed equipment there in the outflow pipe itself, and we also installed a area velocity probe in the pond to measure pond level, and that's what we used to ultimately determine the storage capacity of the pond. I won't list all the parameters we measured. Find me later if you want to know, but it's all the usual NPDES parameters. In addition to all these composite samples, we also collected quarterly grab samples, which include the usual parameters plus fog and E. coli. Okay, so I want to take a second to talk about the challenges, because Camden, beautiful pond, functions pretty well, but in terms of monitoring, it was not a walk in the park. I already mentioned the backflow at both of these street inlets. That made it really difficult to get clean flow data instead of, a flat line, a spike during a rainstorm, your typical hydrograph. It was this constantly oscillating lines that made the flow data really messy. And that also made it really challenging to get the auto samplers to work. They prefer a sustained positive flow to do their thing. I went through like 25 different iterations of programming before I finally found something that worked in the third year of the study. So that's the first problem. The second problem was Crystal Lake, coming from that south inlet over there. It has an automated outlet pump. When the lake level reaches a certain elevation, it'll automatically turn on and send water to Camden Pond, which explains why we got some pretty random samples when there wasn't any rainfall in the area. And ultimately, we were not able to factor out the flow or chemical contribution from that pond or from that lake. We toyed with a couple different ideas, like installing a flow meter by the outlet, but it gets a little tricky because that's not in the city of Minneapolis anymore. It's kind of out of our jurisdiction. And we also thought about taking some in-lake samples to maybe just kind of get an idea of what's going on in there chemically and somehow subtract it out. But ultimately, we did not do any of those things. So our results should be taken with that caveat in place that there is, in addition to the 235 acres of drainage to the pond, we could also kind of count the Crystal Lake drainage area as also coming to the pond. Next, the cemetery inlet had a constant base flow of almost like drinking water, quality water that was kind of mysterious. We didn't really know where it was coming from. My working theory was that their irrigation system is leaking. Sometimes during large events, we would see little bits of broken pipe coming out of the outfall. So all of the samples collected there are some diluted mixture of irrigation water and stormwater. So they were very clean, very low loads coming out of that pipe. So that's a wrinkle as well. Additionally, we had pretty severe droughts in the first and second years of the study that prevented us from getting a robust set of samples. Actually, the North Inlet, we only managed to collect 3 composite samples over 2 years of study, which is pretty lame, but we did our best. And lastly, at the pond's outlet, you can't see it from here, but there's riprap, and the rocks are comically large. So plants actually started growing in between the rocks and built this kind of island that would block water from reaching the outfall, which could be a positive. I'll get to that later, actually. So our findings, now that you've heard all the challenges. First, when it came to pollutant loading, we used P8 and flux to do the calculations. I won't get into the nitty gritty, but we did unstratified, flow stratified, and season stratified loads, both season and annually. So, to no one's surprise, the southern inlet that has the biggest area and has Crystal Lake coming in it has the biggest loads, even when factoring out watershed area. And it contributes about 8 million gallons of water into the pond every year. And like I've said, we did not factor out Crystal Lake, so all of the loads were like huge coming out of that pipe, which looks pretty suspicious on paper, but if you take into account Crystal Lake, it makes a little more sense. And so when it came to pond efficiency, the pond performed really well. Most parameters had over an 80% removal rate, although notably total nitrogen, chloride, hardness, and total dissolved solids did not perform as well. And the pond performed better in 2024 than in 2022 and 2023, which were the drier years, which I thought was kind of interesting. So the data does show that a pond intended for flood control purposes can also have a water quality benefit, which is cool. And I think we could maybe generalize that to other ponds, given that they're a similar size and land use type. And it's pretty impressive that a pond that was designed to only treat this 235 acres can also treat Crystal Lake input as well, so that's a plus. And lastly, the storage capacity of the pond was calculated using our level data. The design capacity was a permanent pool storage volume of 16.4 acre feet, but that riprap at the outlet that's blocking water from getting out actually bumps up the true storage volume to 17.6 acre feet, which is a fun little bonus. That's all the details I have. If anyone wants more
Time to
information,
add a couple of comments.
we got annual reports.
Thank you. Now you know why we're so lucky to have her on the team, but just a couple of quick comments. There is an interpretive sign at the other end of the pond. I don't know if there's time for you to walk by, but we also have what we call a pond land care program around each one of our ponds. And that's really important because the pond land care program manages the vegetation and aesthetic, and as you see, so it really increases, again, the community enjoyment of the ponds. And if you go to our interpretive signage, there's a QR code that connects to the website that we try to have all the information that was shared here on the website for the community. So the community have direct access to the history, design, and everything about the pond. So again, thank you.